Good morning, boys and girls. My name is Miss Valerie, and I am your host. This is your teacher, Miss Summerell. Today, we will learn about the Aztec. Today's lesson is titled, The Aztec, the Floating Gardens of Xochimilco.
By the end of today's lesson, we will be able to identify the area in which the Aztec lived, explain how the Aztec farmed, and distinguish shades of meaning among adjectives differing in intensity. Let's go ahead and get started.
Miss Summerell, what are you doing?
I'm watering my plants, Miss Valerie. I've been working on growing these sunflowers in my garden.
They're so beautiful.
Here, I have some seeds for you. Would you like to grow in your own garden?
Well, I don't have much of a green thumb, but your sunflowers are so pretty that I'd love to give it a try. Now, what exactly do I do with these?
I'll tell you. Well, when you get home, grab a pot and some soil. Put a little hole in the soil and bury the seed. Then you need to place the pot in a sunny spot and water it every day. It takes about 65 days to bloom. You can even replant them into your garden at home, especially since the kind I've given you is the American giant hybrid sunflower.
Ooh, the American giant hybrid sunflower? I think I might be able to keep them alive for 65 days. That sounds great. Thanks.
In a previous lesson, we heard a legend about how the Aztec people ended up living in Lake Texcoco. Remember that a legend is kind of like a folk tale because it often tells a story about why things are the way they are.
We learned that the Aztec were a religious people. They believed in many gods, and their priests were very well respected and powerful among the people.
Here's a word that was introduced in the last lesson. Let's review it. Say chinampas.
Chinampas.
Chinampas are man-made islands appearing to float on the surface of the water. They are often referred to as floating gardens. Say the word chinampas.
Chinampas. Now, let's take a look at a map. If you've been with us for our last episode about the Aztec, we learned that the Aztec civilization was located in a swampy region of what is now Mexico. Here is where they were located, in central Mexico, around Mexico City.
In today's Read Aloud, we will hear about these places.
We will hear about the city of Tenochtitlan, the capital city of the Aztec civilization, which is where present-day Mexico City is. The name Tenochtitlan means place of the cactus.
We will also hear of the place Xochimilco, which was an Aztec village named for the many flowers and other crops that were grown. They are unto numbers. There's also a lake by the same name, Xochimilco, means flower field. We'll also go over these names of Aztec people.
That's right. Our main character's name is Torn Wing.
In many early civilizations, and even in some civilizations today, names were derived from dreams, experiences, and personalities.
That's interesting. I think my name would be Tired One.
In our story, we will hear that the Aztec lived near water, which made the land very good for growing, so they had an abundance of food. Say that word after me. Abundance.
Abundance.
Abundance means in great supply.
Great supply?
Yes, Miss Valerie. In other words, there was a whole lot of maize or corn, beans, squash, tomatoes, and chili peppers growing on there. Miss Valerie, what would you like to have an abundance of?
Let me think about that for just a minute. I would like to have an abundance of toys.
Oh yeah, if we had an abundance of toys, we would be able to play all day. Boys and girls, besides toys, what would you like to have an abundance of? Excellent.
Today you will also hear how the Aztec made islands that appeared to float on the surface of the water. Say that word, float, after me. Float.
Float.
Float means to rest on the surface of the water. Listen to me use it in a sentence. Jose wanted to float all day long in the swimming pool.
I think I understand. So in this image, I can see the flower float on the surface of the water.
That's right, Miss Summerell. Let's demonstrate the word float.
Absolutely. How about we use some common items and test whether or not they float?
Ooh, that sounds like a fun science experiment. Let's do it.
This is a ping pong ball. Miss Valerie, first let's hypothesize or make an educated guess on what we think will happen. Do you think this ping pong ball will float on the surface of the water?
Boys and girls, what do you think? My guess is that the ping pong ball will float.
Let's test it. Ooh, you are right. This ping pong ball floats on the surface of the water. Boys and girls, what would be the opposite or an antonym of float? That's right. The opposite of float is sink. What about this baseball? Miss Valerie, do you think it will float or sink?
I have an idea, but boys and girls, what do you think? Miss Summerell, I think the baseball will sink. After all, a baseball is larger than a ping pong ball. Let's see if we're right.
Yes, let's test it. Actually, Miss Valerie, this baseball floats on the surface of the water.
It sure did. That surprised me a bit. Let's do one more.
This is a golf ball. Let's hypothesize. Do we think this golf ball will float or sink?
Boys and girls, what do you think? Miss Summerell, let's see if they're right.
Wow! A golf ball does not float on the surface of the water. It sinks because it is more dense than the water.
That was a lot of fun, Miss Summerell. I have a feeling that the word float will be in our story today.
That's right. Let's go over a few key facts about the Aztec.
Good idea. Boys and girls, the Maya, another early civilization that lived near the Aztec, were farmers who grew their crops in fields, much like we are growing our sunflowers in our gardens. The Aztec also farmed, but they used a different method of farming than the Maya. The story you will hear today is considered historical fiction, which means it's a made-up story that tells facts about the way the Aztec farmed. So listen carefully to find out how the Aztec farmed a long time ago. Let's get started.
Our title is The Aztec, the Floating Gardens of Xochimilco. Paddling his canoe across the lake, the overpowering smell of blossoming flowers reached Torn Wing before he could even see them. As he came closer, countless small islands, or chinampas, came into view. He could see why people referred to these islands as floating gardens. The Aztec made these islands that appeared to float on the surface of the water. But chinampas could not actually float away. Each island was firmly attached by roots that grew down into the bottom of the lake.
Can we review that word chinampas again?
Sure. Say it after me. Chinampas.
Chinampas.
Chinampas, as the text says, are like floating islands with roots that reach to the bottom of the water. They are called floating gardens because the Aztec grow food on top of them. Let's keep reading. As Torn Wing maneuvered his narrow, flat-bottomed canoe among the canals or waterways separating them, he recalled his uncle's story about how the chinampas were formed. The Aztec had dug ditches out of the swampy land for water to flow through, then cover rafts made of reeds and branches with mud dredged or scooped up from the bottom of the lake. Over the years, layers upon layers of mud were added until finally, with the help of roots from the willow trees, the islands became stationary. In other words, the islands no longer moved because roots from the trees on the raft anchored the rafts to the bottom of the lake. Hundreds of narrow rectangular islands separated by a network of the water ditches called canals covered the swamplands. For the people who had long sought a way to grow plants, even in times when there was no rainfall, these island gardens provided a wonderful solution. The surrounding water kept the earth moist all year long, irrigating and fertilizing the fields. Maize, beans, squash, tomatoes, and chili peppers grew in abundance, supplying the large city of Tenochtitlan and beyond. The gardens of Xochimilco were truly an agricultural wonderland. Torn Wing's uncle, Wingfeather, had described Xochimilco, or the gardens, to Torn Wing after the young man's father, who was Wingfeather's brother, had died. His uncle had said, "My brother was a good man and a good farmer. Did he teach you everything that he knew?" "Yes, uncle," Torn Wing had answered. "I worked at his side in the fields. We always had the best crop of any near our village." "Good," his uncle had said. "I want you to know that even though your parents are gone now, you are not alone. Your aunt and I want you to come and live with us as our son. I can use your help in my business, and since we have no son of our own, when I grow too old to work, it will become yours. But nephew, I do not want you to make or leave your family home. If you prefer to stay in your own village, I will help you by giving you cacao beans."
Cacao beans? I've heard of those before. Cacao beans were very valuable. The Aztec used cacao beans as a kind of money.
And that's right. Chocolate is made from cacao beans. Let's keep reading. "But if you choose to live with us, you should know that the city of Tenochtitlan and its nearby floating gardens are a wonderful place to be." Torn Wing answered, "Then I will come, uncle." Torn Wing had easily followed his uncle's direction to Lake Xochimilco, but now that he was at last among the watery roads of the place, he had forgotten his uncle's warning. There are so many sights to see that it's easy to become overwhelmed and lose your way. Sure enough, Torn Wing was lost. He decided to retrace his route to the edge of the floating gardens and start again. Just then, however, he heard an old woman's voice asking, "Are you lost? Perhaps I can help." Turning, he saw a short, gray-haired woman smiling warmly at him. She was sitting in a boat tied by a rope to the nearest chinampa. "If you are lost," she said energetically, "you are not the first. When I was a girl and came here for the first time, it took weeks before I learned my way around." Tornwing smiled back and said, "You are very kind. As a matter of fact, I am lost. I was trying to find my uncle. His name is Wingfeather." Her smile grew even wider. "I know him. He and my sons are friends. They can take you to him." She squinted closely at the young man. "So you are Wingfeather's nephew? He told us you were coming. My name is Moonwish." She turned and called over her shoulder, "Starweb, Loud Song, come here." From around the far side of a high, thick cluster of plants came two of the biggest men Tornwing had ever seen. He thought to himself, these two certainly do not look anything like their tiny mother. The two young giants grinned. "It is good to meet you," the first one said. "I am Starweb. I am the good-looking brother," he joked. "This is my little brother, Loud Song." Actually, Loud Song was even bigger than Starweb, but he didn't seem to mind this introduction. He laughed and gave his older brother a friendly pat. Then Starweb added, "Loud Song is especially glad to become friends of Wingfeather's relatives." Then the younger brother, Loud Song, said, "I will lead you to your uncle." Sliding into a canoe so smoothly that it hardly rocked beneath him, he said, "Follow me," and started off. Tornwing had just enough time to say goodbye to Moonwish and Starweb, paddling off quickly in order to keep his guide in sight. "What a wonderful place," he thought. "This is my new home." All the tiredness of his journey was forgotten in his excitement as he rode further into the heart of the Floating Gardens of Xochimilco.
Whoa, what an adventurous legend.
You are right, Miss Valerie. Let's review some of the details. What are chinampas?
Chinampas are islands called the Floating Gardens.
Exactly. Boys and girls, did you remember that detail?
I have a question. How did the Aztec create the chinampas or floating gardens? Boys and girls, do you remember? Miss Summerell, do you remember?
The Aztec dug canals out of the swampy land and then used the mud dredged up from the bottom of the lake to cover rafts made of reeds and branches. Over the years, layers upon layers of mud were added until finally, with the help of roots from the willow trees, the islands became stationary.
That's right. Great job, Miss Summerell. And great job, boys and girls.
How did the Aztec use the chinampas?
I know. The Aztec used the chinampas to grow food and other crops.
Good. In today's Read Aloud, you heard maize, beans, squash, tomatoes, and chili peppers grew in abundance, supplying the large city of Tenochtitlan and beyond.
That's right. Abundance means more than enough or in great supply.
Yes. Let's look at these other words that refer to amount. Say the words after me. Abundance, lack, much, many, few, little, need, plenty. Now, boys and girls, in just a moment, we are going to place them in the correct order to show the shades of meaning. Let's go over what we mean by shades of meaning.
Some words can be organized by shades of meaning or intensity. For example, if I want to say that something is hot, I might use the word hot. But if I wanted to say that something is hotter than hot, I might use a more intense word like scorching or blistering or even incinerating.
Ooh, that's right. Hot, scorching, and blistering are words that are similar in meaning, but can be put in order of intensity. Today, we'll put abundance on one side and lack on the other. The other words you just read have similar meanings to these two, but may not be as intense. Miss Valerie, can you help us place these words in the correct shades of meaning order?
Absolutely. Many is a word similar to abundance, but not quite as intense. Much also means you have some, but is less intense than abundance or many. If I have a few of something, it's even less than many. It's less than much. Now, I also have the word, if I have the word little, I might have some, but even less than few. Now I have the word need. If I need something, then I don't have it. So I believe it goes closer to lack, since lack also means that I don't have anything. Finally, I have the word plenty. Let's see. Miss Summerell, would you think that plenty is closer to abundance or lack?
Well, if I have plenty of something, I have a lot, so I think it goes closer to abundance.
Perfect. Then I'll put it over here, right after the word abundance. Now, what do we think of this order? Abundance, plenty, many, much, few, little, need, and lack. Looks like it goes from having a lot to having nothing.
Great job, Miss Valerie. We just put these words in order of their intensity to show shades of meaning. Remember, some words are similar in meaning but differ in intensity.
That was a fun activity. Maybe the boys and girls watching can find several words that have a similar meaning to the word cold and put them in order of intensity.
Good idea. Thank you, boys and girls, for joining us today. All rights and credits from this lesson belong to Core Knowledge Language Arts. We would like to thank them for publicly sharing these materials. The views and opinions expressed in this lesson are those of the core knowledge authors and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the Mississippi Department of Education.
If you are interested in reading more about the Aztec, check out these books at your local library or online. The Aztec, True Books, American Indians by Andrew Santella. The Aztec Empire, True Books, Ancient Civilizations by Sunita Apt. And The Aztec Empire, Excavating the Past by Nicholas Saunders and Tony Allen. Together with your family, you may want to peruse the internet for short, age-appropriate videos related to the Aztec. Discuss how watching a video is the same and different from listening to a storybook or a read aloud.
Use what you have learned today Go tell someone at home about the unique way the Aztec farmed. And remember to use the word abundance in a sentence.
Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you again soon.